Elara Vance stood frozen, rifle trembling in her hands as the stranger's fist pounded against her cabin door. Outside, the blizzard screamed like something alive, hungry. Inside, Noah's rattling cough echoed from the corner where the sick boy lay dying. She had survived a brutal husband, starvation, and the merciless frontier, but tonight felt different. This choice felt final. The man outside could be salvation or slaughter. Her finger hovered near the trigger. One decision, life or death. She reached for the bolt. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The door rattled again, harder this time. Snow hissed through the cracks in the wood, spiraling across the dirt floor like skeletal fingers. Please, the voice called from outside. Deep, steady, not begging, just stating. I won't make it another hour in this. Elara's arms ached from holding the rifle up. The weapon was old, same one her late husband Jonas had used to shoot coyotes and once to put a bullet hole in the wall 6 inches from her head during one of his rages. She'd patched the hole with tar paper, never fixed the memory. Go to town, she shouted back, her voice rawer than she wanted it to be. Town's 10 miles south. I'd be dead in 2. Behind her, Noah coughed again. Wet, thick, the kind of sound that meant his lungs were filling with something they shouldn't be. The boy was only 7, small for his age, with dark hair that stuck to his forehead in fever sweat. She'd found him 3 weeks ago near the creek, half frozen, parents nowhere, probably dead. People died out here all the time. The land didn't care about your story. She'd taken him in because she was stupid like that. Soft in places Jonas had tried to beat hard. I got sickness in here, Elara said, louder. You come in, you might catch it. Silence. Wind howled. She wondered if he'd left, if the storm had swallowed him already. Good. Better him than her and Noah. Then, I'll risk it. She closed her eyes. Stupid. This was stupid. Every bone in her body knew it. But Noah coughed again, and she thought about the fever, about how she'd run out of willow bark 2 days ago, about how the nearest doctor was in a town she couldn't reach until the snow cleared. If it cleared. Last winter, the Hendersons had frozen to death a mile from their own property. They'd found the bodies in April, still clutching each other. Elara's hands decided before her brain did. She lowered the rifle, crossed to the door, and threw the bolt. The man who stumbled inside was massive. Easily 6'3", maybe more. Shoulders broad enough to block the doorway even as he hunched against the cold. Ice clung to his dark beard. His coat was shredded on one side, and his eyes, gray, calm, unsettling in how calm, locked onto hers for just a second before he looked away. Barn, she said, not lowering the rifle. You don't come in the house. He nodded, didn't argue, didn't even glance around, just waited. She jerked her head toward the structure 50 feet east, barely visible through the whiteout. You'll freeze to death out there anyway, but that's your choice. Barn's fine. His voice matched his eyes, steady, like nothing rattled him. Thank you. The politeness startled her more than anything else. Men out here didn't thank women. They took, demanded, or ignored. She watched him turn and trudge toward the barn, the snow already erasing his footprints. Then she slammed the door, bolted it, and stood there shaking. Stupid. 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 Noah's fever broke 2 hours later. Elara sat beside his cot, wringing out a cloth in the basin, watching his chest rise and fall. The rattling had eased. Not gone, but better. She'd boiled the last of the pine needles into a tea, forced him to drink it while he whimpered. Hated herself for it, hated this place. Hated Jonas for dying and leaving her with debts she didn't know existed and land she couldn't manage, and a life that felt like drowning in slow motion. The wind had died down. Not much, but enough that she could hear the silence between gusts. She glanced toward the window. The barn was dark except for a faint glow. Probably the stranger had found the old lamp, the one with the cracked glass that leaked oil. Jonas never fixed anything, just broke things and moved on. Elara stood, tucked the blanket tighter around Noah, and picked up the rifle. She didn't know why. Habit, maybe. Or the fact that she'd learned the hard way that safety was an illusion. She opened the door a crack, peered out. Snow had piled 3 feet high against the north wall. The barn door was cracked open, lamplight spilling out in a thin line. Against every instinct, she grabbed her coat and stepped outside. The cold hit like a fist. Her breath crystallized instantly, lungs screaming. She pushed through the drifts, each step sinking to her knees, until she reached the barn. Inside, the stranger had cleared a space near the back, stacked hay bales for wind protection. The old horse, Greta, 15 years old and mean as hell, stood nearby, unbothered. She usually bit strangers. The man was crouched near the lamp, hands extended toward the small flame. His coat hung on a nail, revealing a shirt torn at the shoulder. Blood, dried dark, stained the fabric. "You're hurt," Alara said. He didn't startle, just glanced up, like he'd known she was there the whole time. "It's old," he said. "Doesn't look old. Old enough." He straightened and she realized just how big he was. Not fat, solid, like a tree that had survived too many storms. Scars ran across his knuckles, his neck, one near his jaw, pale and thick. "The boy doing better?" She blinked. "How'd you—" Heard him coughing, stopped about an hour ago. "You a doctor?" "No." "Then what are you?" He held her gaze. "Someone passing through." "Where to?" "Anywhere that's not where I've been." Alara's grip on the rifle tightened. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." They stood there, barn air thick with the smell of hay and horse and something else. Leather, maybe, or gunpowder. She couldn't tell. "You got a name?" she asked. "Rhett." Rhett called her. "I'm Alara. That's all you need to know." He nodded. "Fair enough." She turned to leave, then stopped. "There's stew in the pot. It's not much, but it's something. I'll bring some out." "You don't have to—" "I know I don't have to. I'm doing it anyway." The next morning, she woke to the sound of hammering. Alara shot upright, heart slamming, rifle already in her hands before her brain caught up. Noah was still asleep, curled under the blankets, breathing easier now. She crossed to the window. Rhett was on the roof. Not the barn roof. Her roof. The one Jonas had patched with rotten boards that leaked every time it rained. The one she'd been meaning to fix but never had the strength, or know-how, or time. He was pulling off the old shingles, tossing them into the snow, replacing them with boards he must have found in the shed. She stood there staring, brain refusing to process. Then she grabbed her coat and stormed outside. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He paused mid-swing, hammer in hand, looked down. "Fixing your roof." "I didn't ask you to fix my roof." "I know." "Then why—" "Because it needs fixing." He gestured toward the south corner. "You've got rot spreading. Another month, maybe 2, the whole section collapses. Snow gets in, you're done." Alara's jaw clenched. "I don't need your help." "Didn't say you did." He went back to hammering. She stood there, furious and helpless, and hating both feelings. "You can't just— people don't just— I'm not people." He didn't look at her. "I'm someone who knows how to fix a roof. You've got a kid in there who's sick. You don't need a roof caving in on top of everything else." "I don't owe you anything." "I'm not asking you to owe me anything." Noah appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, eyes wide. "Miss Alara, who's that?" "No one," she snapped, then softer. "Get back inside. You're still sick." But Noah didn't move. He stared up at Rhett, something like wonder in his face. "You're real big, mister." Rhett glanced down, and for the first time something shifted in his expression. Not a smile, too broken for that, but close. "You're real small." Noah giggled, actually giggled. Alara couldn't remember the last time she'd heard that sound. "I like him," Noah announced. "Inside, now." The boy obeyed, reluctant, dragging the blanket behind him. Alara looked back up at Rhett. He'd already returned to work, each strike of the hammer precise, efficient. "You leave when the storm clears," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "And you don't touch anything else." He paused, met her eyes. "Yes, ma'am." She didn't believe him, but she went inside anyway. Asong. By the third day, he'd fixed the fence, the one Jonas had broken during a drunken rage, the one that let the chickens wander into coyote territory. Alara had lost 6 birds before she gave up trying to patch it herself. Rhett had rebuilt the whole section. New posts, tight wire, solid. She watched from the window, furious. He hadn't asked, hadn't even mentioned it, just did it. Noah sat at the table, spooning stew into his mouth, stronger now, color back in his cheeks. I think he's nice, Noah said. You think everyone's nice? Do not. You tried to pet a rattlesnake last summer. That was different. Alara rubbed her temples. He's leaving soon. How do you know? Because everyone leaves. Noah went quiet. She regretted the words instantly, but it was too late. The truth had a way of cutting through everything else. That night, she brought Rhett dinner. Same stew, but she'd added extra meat, rabbit she'd snared that morning. He took the bowl without comment, ate standing up. They didn't talk. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, just there. You didn't have to fix the fence, she finally said. I know. So why'd you do it? He chewed slowly, swallowed. Needed fixing. That's not a reason. It's reason enough. She wanted to argue, to push, to make him explain why a stranger would spend 3 days fixing a widow's homestead for nothing. But the look in his eyes stopped her, tired, not sleepy tired, soul tired, the kind that came from carrying weight too long. You running from something? She asked. His jaw tightened. Yeah. What? Myself, mostly. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and left. The storm finally broke on the 5th day. Alara woke to sunlight, actual sunlight, cutting through the gaps in the curtains. The wind had died completely. Outside, the world was white and still and almost beautiful. Rhett was already gone from the barn. Her chest tightened. Of course. She'd told him to leave. That's what she'd wanted. Then she saw him near the shed, splitting firewood. A month's worth, at least. Maybe more. Stacked neat and dry under the overhang. Noah ran outside, boots untied, coat flapping. Mr. Rhett, you're still here. Rhett set down the axe. For now. Are you going to stay forever? No. Why not? Because I don't stay places. But you could. Miss Alara's real nice, even when she's grumpy. And I'm real good at checkers. And we got a horse. Noah, Alara called from the doorway. Let the man work. But Noah grabbed Rhett's hand, small fingers wrapping around scarred knuckles. Please stay, just a little longer. Something cracked in Rhett's expression. He looked at the boy, then at Alara, then at the ground. I'll stay till the road's clear, he said quietly. Noah whooped and ran inside. Alara crossed her arms. You don't have to. I know. Then why? Because he asked. Their eyes met, held. She broke first, turned away. There's coffee inside. It's terrible, but it's hot. Sounds perfect. The trouble arrived 6 days later in the form of a man on horseback. Alara saw him from the window, expensive coat, dark hat, riding a horse worth more than her entire property. She knew who he was before he even dismounted. Darius Klein, the richest landowner in 3 counties, a man who smiled when he ruined people. She grabbed the rifle. Rhett was in the barn. She didn't call for him. This was her fight. Klein knocked, polite, controlled. She opened the door halfway. Mrs. Vance? He tipped his hat. Lovely morning. Mr. Klein, may I come in? No. His smile didn't falter. I apologize for the intrusion, but I'm afraid we have business to discuss. I don't have business with you. Your late husband did. Her stomach dropped. Klein pulled a folded paper from his coat. Jonas borrowed a substantial sum from me 2 years ago. The debt transfers to you as his widow. That's not legal. It's very legal. I have documentation, signed and witnessed. She stared at the paper, at his manicured hands, at the cold satisfaction in his eyes. How much? She asked. $1,200. The world tilted. 1,200. She didn't have 12. Barely had enough food to last the month. I can't pay that. I know. Klein refolded the paper. Which is why I'm prepared to offer an alternative. You sign over the land and we'll call the debt settled. This land's all I have. Then I suggest you find the money. He tipped his hat again. You have 30 days, Mrs. Vance. After that, I'll involve the law. He mounted his horse and rode off, leaving Alara standing in the doorway, shaking. Rhett appeared beside her. She hadn't heard him approach. What did he want? He asked. She couldn't speak, just handed him the paper. He read it, expression darkening. This is extortion. It's legal extortion. Still extortion. Doesn't matter, I can't fight it. Rhett crumpled the paper in his fist. Maybe you can't, but I can. She looked at him. What does that mean? Means I know men like Klein, and I know how they break. You need to leave, now, before you get dragged into something that's not your problem. Too late. He met her eyes. I'm already dragged in. Noah called from inside, asking for breakfast, oblivious to the disaster unfolding. Alara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Rhett placed one massive palm over both of hers, steadying them. We'll figure it out. We? Yeah, we. For the first time in years, Alara felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. It terrified her more than anything else. The next week passed in a blur of work and worry. Rhett disappeared into town twice, wouldn't say why. Came back with supplies, nails, wire, things they needed. Alara didn't ask where he got the money. He fixed the barn door, reinforced the chicken coop, built a bench near the fire for Noah, who followed him everywhere, chattering about everything and nothing. She watched them together, the massive, scarred man and the small, fragile boy. And something in her chest pulled tight. One night, after Noah had fallen asleep, she found Rhett sitting outside on the porch, whittling a piece of wood. You're good with him, she said. He's easy to be good with. Not for most men. Rhett's knife paused. I'm not most men. I'm starting to notice that. He glanced up. The moonlight caught his face, highlighting the scars, the exhaustion, the something else she couldn't name. What are you really running from? She asked. He looked back at the wood. The kind of life where fixing things didn't matter, where the only thing I was good at was breaking them. What changed? I got tired of breaking. She sat beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him, far enough to run if she needed to. Klein's not going to let this go, she said. I know. If you stay, it'll get dangerous. I know that too. Then why are you still here? He set down the knife, looked at her, really looked, in a way that made her feel seen for the first time in forever. Because leaving would be easier, he said, and I'm tired of easy. Her breath caught. Before she could respond, a sound echoed from the distance. Hoofbeats. Multiple. Rhett stood instantly, body coiled. Get inside, lock the door. What? Now. She grabbed Noah, still half asleep, and bolted inside. Through the window, she saw them. 3 riders, torches blazing, heading straight for the cabin. Rhett stood in the middle of the yard, unarmed, waiting. The lead rider pulled up short. Even in the dark, Alara recognized the sneer. Klein's men. You the one fixing up this place? The leader called. Yeah. Mr. Klein says you're trespassing. Tell Mr. Klein he's mistaken. The man laughed. You got a death wish, friend? Rhett's voice dropped, cold and flat. You really want to find out? The temperature seemed to plummet. The horses shifted, uneasy. The leader's hand drifted toward his gun. Alara's finger found the rifle trigger. Then Rhett moved, fast, impossibly fast for someone his size. He grabbed the horse's bridle, yanked hard. The animal reared. The rider fell, hit the ground hard. The other 2 went for their guns. Alara fired. The shot cracked through the night. Dirt exploded near the second rider's horse. The animal bolted, rider clinging desperately. The third man froze. Rhett stepped forward, grabbed the fallen leader by the collar, hauled him up one-handed. You tell Klein that this land's protected. He comes back, he won't like what happens next. He shoved the man toward his horse. The 3 scrambled away, torches flickering as they disappeared into the dark. Silence. Rhett turned toward the cabin. Alara stood in the doorway, rifle still raised, heart hammering. You okay? He asked. She nodded, couldn't speak. Noah peered around her legs. That was scary. Yeah, Rhett's voice gentled. But it's over now. Except they all knew it wasn't. This was just the beginning. The days that followed were tense. Alara barely slept, jumping at every sound. Rhett started sleeping in the barn with a loaded shotgun across his lap. Noah didn't understand why the grown-ups were scared. He just knew that Mr. Rhett taught him how to stack firewood properly, and Miss Alara let him stay up late playing cards. On the 10th day, a different visitor arrived. This one wore a badge. Sheriff Morris was old, weathered, with eyes that had seen too much and stopped caring somewhere along the way. Mrs. Vance, he said, tipping his hat. Got a complaint from Mr. Klein about threats and gunfire. He sent men to burn my property, Alara shot back. He says they were delivering a legal notice. At midnight? With torches? Morris sighed. Look, I don't like this any more than you do, but Klein's got documentation, legal debt. If you can't pay, I'll pay. With what? She had no answer. The sheriff's gaze drifted to Rhett, who stood near the barn, arms crossed. That him? The drifter? He's helping with repairs. Uh-huh. Morris scratched his jaw. You know there's a bounty on someone matching his description? Out of Colorado, murder charge. Alara's blood turned to ice. Rhett didn't move, didn't deny it. That true? Morris asked. Yeah, Rhett said quietly. It's true. The world tilted again. Morris nodded slowly. Then I'm afraid you're going to have to come with me. No. The word tore out of Alara before she could stop it. Ma'am, he saved my life. He saved Noah's life. He's done nothing but help. He's wanted for murder. Then let him explain. Morris looked between them, tired and resigned. It doesn't work like that. Rhett stepped forward, hands raised. I'll go. Just let them be. No! Noah's voice, high and desperate, rang out. The boy ran from the cabin, threw himself at Rhett's legs. You can't take him. He's good. He's good. Rhett knelt, gently pried Noah's arms loose. Hey, listen. Sometimes good people do bad things for the right reasons, and sometimes they have to face what they've done. But you didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, kid, I did. He looked at Alara, and in his eyes she saw the truth, the weight he'd been carrying, the reason he'd been running. I killed a man. He was hurting people, and I stopped him, but that doesn't change what I did. Alara's throat closed. Morris cleared his throat. We can sort this out in town, legal-like. Rhett stood, turned toward the sheriff. And Alara made a decision. Wait, she stepped between them, rifle lowered but ready. If you take him, Klein wins. He'll have my land by sunset. Is that what you want? Morris hesitated. You know what Klein is, she pressed. You know what he does to people. Rhett's the only thing standing between me and losing everything. The law's the law, ma'am. Then the law's broken. They stood there, standoff in the snow, breath fogging the air. Finally, Morris sighed, rubbed his face. I'll give you 72 hours. Figure something out. After that, I'm coming back and I won't ask nice. He mounted his horse and left. Alara turned to Rhett. He looked at her like she'd just done something incomprehensible. Why? He asked. Because you stayed when you didn't have to, she said. Because Noah trusts you. Because I... She stopped. Couldn't finish. Rhett closed the distance between them. Because what? Because I think maybe you deserve a chance to be more than your worst mistake. His expression cracked. For a moment, she thought he might break completely. Then he nodded. Just once. 72 hours. I'll make them count. That night, Rhett told her everything. They sat by the fire, Noah asleep in the corner, and he unraveled the story he'd been carrying. His name was Clayton Mercer, Rhett said, staring into the flames. Ran a work camp in Colorado. Called it a mining operation, but it was slavery dressed up legal. Immigrants, mostly. People with nowhere else to go. He'd work them till they dropped, then bury them in unmarked graves. Alara's stomach turned. I was passing through, saw a kid, couldn't have been more than 12, collapse in the street. Tried to help. Mercer's men dragged him back, said he owed labor. I followed. His hands curled into fists. Found 20 people locked in a shed. No food, no water. 3 were already dead. I got them out, got them to the next town. Then I went back. For Mercer, Alara said. Yeah. Rhett's voice was flat. Confronted him. Told him I'd reported everything to the territorial marshal. He laughed. Said the marshal was on his payroll. Then he pulled a gun. You killed him in self-defense. I killed him because the world's better without men like him in it. He looked at her. That's not self-defense. That's murder. That's justice. Law doesn't see it that way. She reached out, placed her hand over his. Then the law's as broken as I said. His fingers tightened around hers. You don't owe me this. I know. Then why? Because you're not him. You're not Jonas or Klein or any of the men who take and take until there's nothing left. Her voice cracked. You're the first person in years who's given without asking for anything back. So yeah, I'm fighting for you, even if it's stupid. It's definitely stupid. Then I guess we're both idiots. He laughed. Short, broken, but real. Guess so. They sat there, hands linked, fire crackling, the weight of the world pressing down. Outside, the wind picked up again. Somewhere in the distance, trouble was coming, but for now, in this moment, they had each other. And maybe that was enough. The 72 hours felt like borrowed time, each one slipping through Alara's fingers faster than she could hold on. She woke before dawn the next morning to find Rhett already gone from the barn, his bedroll neatly folded, the shotgun propped against the wall. Panic seized her chest. She threw on her coat and ran outside, boots crunching through fresh snow. He was at the creek. Not running, not hiding, just standing there in the half-light, staring at the frozen water like it held answers he couldn't find anywhere else. "Thought you'd left," she said, hating how her voice shook. He turned. "Told you I'd stay 72 hours. People lie." "I don't." She believed him. That was the problem. She'd stopped believing in much of anything after Jonas, after years of promises that turned to ash in her mouth. But Rhett spoke like every word cost him something, like lies were a luxury he couldn't afford. "What were you doing out here?" she asked. "Thinking." "About?" "How to fix this mess without getting you killed." The casual way he said it, like her death was just another problem to solve, made her angry. "I can take care of myself." "I know you can. Doesn't mean you should have to." He picked up a rock, weighed it in his palm. "Klein's not going to stop. Men like him never do. They see something they want, they take it, legal or not." "So what do we do?" "We?" He looked at her, something unreadable in his face. "There's no we, Alara. This is your land, your life. I'm just passing through." "You keep saying that, but you're still here." "For now." "Why?" She stepped closer, close enough to see the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. "If you're just passing through, why fix my roof? Why stand up to Klein's men? Why tell Noah bedtime stories about stars when you think I'm not listening?" His jaw tightened. "Because I'm selfish." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got." He threw the rock. It skipped across the ice once, twice, then disappeared into snow. "I spent 5 years running from what I did. Sleeping in ditches, stealing food, looking over my shoulder every damn second. And then I knocked on your door, and for the first time since Colorado, I felt like maybe I was worth something besides a bounty." Her throat closed. "That's selfish," he continued, voice rough. "Using you and Noah to feel human again, but I can't seem to stop." "Then don't." The words came out before she could think them through. "Don't stop." He stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. Before either of them could say more, Noah's voice rang out from the cabin. "Miss Alara, I'm hungry." The spell broke. Alara turned back toward the house, Rhett following a few steps behind, the space between them heavy with everything unsaid. Inside, Noah was attempting to make breakfast. Attempting being the key word. Flour dusted the table, the floor, his hair. An egg sat cracked on the counter, yolk running toward the edge. "I was trying to help," he said, guilt written across his small face. Alara bit back a sigh. "I see that." Rhett crossed to the stove, grabbed a pan. "Here, I'll show you how to do it right." "Alara, sit. You look dead on your feet." She wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. She sank into the chair and watched as Rhett guided Noah through the steps. How to crack an egg one-handed. How to keep the heat low so it didn't burn. How to flip it without breaking the yolk. Noah hung on every word, eyes bright with concentration. "My pa never taught me to cook," the boy said quietly. Rhett's hand stilled for just a moment. "Yeah? What'd he teach you?" "Nothing. He died before I was born. Mama said he was good at fixing things, though, like you." "I'm sure he was better." "Nuh-uh. You're the best." Something in Rhett's expression cracked. He ruffled Noah's hair, gentle, careful, like the kid might break. "You're a good apprentice. Now flip it. Easy does it." Noah flipped the egg. It landed perfectly. "I did it." He spun toward Alara. "Did you see?" "I saw." She forced a smile, ignoring the way her chest ached watching them together. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. For a moment, Alara let herself pretend this was normal, that this was her life. Breakfast with people she cared about, no debts hanging over her head, no sheriffs counting down hours, no stranger with a murder charge sleeping in her barn. Then someone knocked on the door. Rhett was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between the door and Noah. Alara grabbed the rifle. "Mrs. Vance?" A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. "My name's Charlotte Webb. I'm a friend." Alara exchanged a glance with Rhett. He shrugged. No idea. She cracked the door open. The woman on the other side was maybe 40, dressed in town clothes, expensive but not flashy. Her face was kind, the kind that had seen hardship and chosen gentleness anyway. "I'm sorry to intrude," Charlotte said, "but I heard about your situation with Mr. Klein. I wanted to help." "How'd you hear about it?" "Small town, word travels." Charlotte glanced past her at Rhett. "Especially when it involves wanted men and land disputes." Alara's grip on the rifle tightened. Charlotte raised her hands. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because Klein did the same thing to my sister 3 years ago. Claimed her husband owed money, took the land when she couldn't pay. She lost everything. I don't want to see it happen to someone else." "What can you do about it?" "I have information." Charlotte pulled a small leather journal from her coat. "My late husband was Klein's accountant before he got a conscience and quit. He kept records. Every shady deal, every forged debt, every piece of land Klein stole using legal loopholes." Alara's heart hammered. "That could ruin him." "It could, if it reaches the right people." Charlotte's expression darkened. "But Klein has half the county in his pocket. Judges, lawyers, the territorial governor. Going against him is dangerous." "How dangerous?" "My husband died in a riding accident 2 months after he quit. His horse was found with a bullet in its skull." The temperature in the room dropped. Rhett spoke for the first time. "Why are you doing this?" Charlotte met his gaze steadily. "Because someone has to. Because my sister hanged herself last winter after losing everything. Because I'm tired of watching him destroy lives while everyone looks the other way." Silence stretched. Noah sat at the table, forgotten breakfast cooling, watching the adults with wide, confused eyes. "What do you need from me?" Alara asked. "Time. I need to get these records to a federal marshal in Denver, someone outside Klein's reach. But that's a week's journey in good weather, 2 weeks with the snow. Morris said I have 3 days before he comes back for Rhett. Then we need to move fast." Charlotte looked at Rhett. "The bounty on you. How much?" 500. That's enough to make desperate men do stupid things. You need to disappear until this blows over." "I'm not leaving them alone. You won't be any good to them dead." "He's not leaving," Alara said. The words came out harder than she intended. "We figure this out together, or not at all?" Charlotte studied them both, something knowing in her expression. "All right. Then here's what we do. I take the journal to Denver. You keep your heads down. Don't give Klein or Morris any reason to move before I get back. If I can get these records to the right people, the bounty won't matter. Klein's the real criminal here." "And if you can't?" Rhett asked. "Then you run, and you don't stop running." Noah's small voice cut through the tension. "I don't want Mr. Rhett to run." Charlotte's expression softened. "I know, sweetheart. None of us do." She left 20 minutes later, journal hidden in her saddlebag, promising to send word as soon as she reached Denver. Alara watched her ride away until she was just a dark speck against white snow. "You think she'll make it?" Rhett asked. "I don't know. But she's the only chance we've got." The days that followed were strange. Time moved differently when you knew it might run out. Alara found herself noticing things she'd ignored before. The way Rhett's hands moved when he worked, efficient and sure. The sound of his laugh when Noah told bad jokes. The careful way he knocked before entering the cabin, like he was still asking permission to exist in her space. She caught herself staring more than once. Caught him staring back. They didn't talk about it. On the second night, after Noah had fallen asleep, they sat on the porch again. It was becoming a habit, these quiet moments stolen from the chaos. "Tell me about your husband," Rhett said. Alara stiffened. "Why?" "Because you flinch every time someone mentions him. Because there's a bullet hole in the wall you never fixed. Because I want to understand." She was quiet for a long time, then, Jonas was charming when we met. Funny, made promises about the life we'd build out here. I was 17 and stupid enough to believe him. You weren't stupid. I married a man I barely knew and moved 1,000 miles from anyone who gave a damn about me. That's pretty stupid. Rhett didn't argue. The first time he hit me was 6 months in, she continued, voice flat. I burned dinner. He apologized after, cried, said it would never happen again. It happened again and again. By the end, I was just trying to survive until he drank himself to death. How'd he die? Fell off his horse coming back from town, drunk, broke his neck. She looked at Rhett. I didn't cry at the funeral. Does that make me a bad person? Makes you human. The thing is, I thought I'd feel free after he died, but I just felt nothing, like he'd taken so much of me that there wasn't anything left to feel with. Rhett reached over, took her hand. His palm was rough, warm, steady. You're still here. That's something. Is it? Yeah, it is. They sat like that, hands linked, until the cold drove them inside. The next morning, Klein himself showed up. No men this time, just him, alone, riding that expensive horse, smile sharp as a knife. Alara met him in the yard, rifle in hand. Rhett stood behind her, silent and solid. Mrs. Vance, Klein said pleasantly, I thought we might talk, civilly. We've got nothing to talk about. I disagree. You see, I've been thinking about your situation, a widow, alone, with a child to care for. That's a heavy burden. I'm managing fine. Are you? He gestured at the property. The repairs are impressive, I'll admit, but temporary. Winter's just getting started. You'll run out of food, firewood, money, and then what? Then I'll figure it out. Or, Klein leaned forward in his saddle, voice dropping to something almost kind. You could sell me the land now. I'll pay fair price, more than fair. Enough to start fresh somewhere safe, somewhere your boy won't freeze to death. Alara's finger twitched near the trigger. This land's not for sale. Everything's for sale, Mrs. Vance. It's just a matter of price. Rhett stepped forward. She said no. Klein's gaze shifted to him, assessment cold and calculating. Ah, yes, the drifter. I've heard about you. Quite the reputation back in Colorado. That's old news. Murder never gets old. Neither do bounties. Klein smiled. $500 is a lot of money, especially for a widow struggling to survive. The implication hung in the air like poison. Alara's voice came out ice. Get off my property! I'm simply pointing out the obvious. You're protecting a killer. That makes you complicit. When Morris comes back, and he will, you'll lose everything anyway. The land, the boy, possibly your freedom. I said get off my property. Klein straightened, smile never wavering. 3 days, Mrs. Vance, then the law takes over. I'd use that time wisely if I were you. He rode off, slow and deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. Because he did. Alara lowered the rifle, hand shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. He's right, Rhett said quietly. About what? About me making things worse. I should go. No. Alara, shh. No. She spun on him, fury and fear colliding. You don't get to decide that. Not after everything. Not after... Her voice cracked. Not after I finally found someone worth fighting for. The words hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Rhett stared at her like she'd reached into his chest and grabbed something vital. You don't mean that, he said. Yes, I do. You barely know me. I know you fix things instead of breaking them. I know you're gentle with Noah even though you're scared you'll hurt him. I know you carry guilt for something you shouldn't have to carry alone. She stepped closer. I know that when you look at me, I feel like I matter, like I'm more than just something to be used and discarded. His jaw worked. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Care about someone without ruining them. Then learn. We'll figure it out together. I'm not good at together. Neither am I. Guess we'll be terrible at it together. Something broke in his expression. He closed the distance between them, cupped her face in his hands, careful, like she might shatter. This is a bad idea, he whispered. Probably the worst. I'm going to hurt you eventually, disappoint you. Join the club. Alara. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle or romantic or any of the things she'd read about in the dime novels the general store sold. It was desperate and messy and real, tasting like coffee and fear and something that might have been hope if she let herself believe in it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Rhett pressed his forehead against hers. 3 days, he said. I know. If Charlotte doesn't come back, she will. But if she doesn't, then we run, all three of us. We take Noah and we go somewhere Klein and Morris can't find us. That's not a life. It's better than the alternative. He pulled back, searched her face. You do that? Give up everything? This land's just dirt and wood. You and Noah? She stopped, swallowed hard. You're real. You matter. The rest is just details. Noah's voice drifted from the cabin, calling for breakfast. Reality crashed back in. They separated, the moment fracturing into 1,000 practical concerns. But something had shifted, something neither of them could take back. The third day arrived too fast. Alora woke to gray skies and the feeling of time running out. No word from Charlotte, no miracle salvation. Just Morris on his horse, right on schedule, riding up the path with grim determination. She met him at the door. Rhett stood beside her, Noah clutching his leg. Mrs. Vance, Morris said. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're right. I'm not. But I am tired. He dismounted, pulled shackles from his saddlebag. Mr. Calder, I'm taking you in. You can come quiet, or we can do this hard, your choice. I'll come quiet. No! Noah screamed. He threw himself at Morris, tiny fists pounding. You can't take him! He's ours! Morris caught the boy gently, held him at arm's length. I know you're scared, son, but this is the law. The law's stupid. Won't argue with you there. Rhett knelt, pulled Noah into a hug. The boy sobbed against his chest, small body shaking. Listen to me, Rhett said softly. You take care of Miss Alara, understand? Be brave. Be good. And remember everything I taught you about fixing things. I don't want to remember. I want you to stay. I know, kid. I know. Alara watched, something dying in her chest. Then hoofbeats. Multiple. Everyone turned. Charlotte Webb rode up the path, not alone. Behind her, 3 men in federal uniforms, U.S. Marshals, badges gleaming. Morris went pale. Charlotte dismounted, exhaustion written across her face, but triumph in her eyes. Sheriff Morris, I'd like to introduce Deputy Marshal James Hawthorne. He has some questions about Darius Klein's business practices. The lead marshal stepped forward, tall and grizzled and official. Sheriff, we need to see all documentation regarding the land dispute between Klein and Mrs. Vance. That's county business. It's federal business now. We've reviewed Mrs. Webb's evidence. Klein's been running a fraud operation across 3 territories. Forged debts, intimidation, murder. His gaze shifted to Rhett. We also reviewed the Colorado case. Clayton Mercer was wanted in 5 states for trafficking and murder. The kill was ruled justified 2 weeks ago. Bounty's been lifted. Silence. Noah stopped crying. Alara couldn't breathe. Rhett stared at the marshal like he'd spoken gibberish. What? You're free to go, Mr. Calder. The charges are dropped. That's not possible. It's very possible. Turns out Mercer had powerful enemies. Once they heard he was dead, they made sure the record reflected reality. Hawthorne's expression softened slightly. You did the world a favor. Took us longer than it should have to recognize that. Rhett sat down hard in the snow, like his legs had stopped working. Noah launched himself at him, crying again but different this time. Happy. Charlotte approached Alara, exhaustion and satisfaction mixing on her face. Klein's being arrested as we speak. Everything he stole, every lie he told. It's over. How? Alara managed. My husband kept better records than Klein knew. Names, dates, amounts. The marshals have enough to put him away for 20 years. She smiled, tired but genuine. You're free. The debt's void. The land's yours. The world tilted sideways. Alara sat down beside Rhett in the snow, Noah between them, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she cried. Not from fear or pain or exhaustion, from relief. The marshals left an hour later, taking Morris with them for questioning about his cooperation with Klein. Charlotte stayed long enough for coffee, then rode back to town, promising to visit soon. The sun broke through the clouds as they disappeared down the path. Alara stood in the yard with Rhett and Noah, watching light transform the snow into something almost beautiful. "So," Rhett said quietly, "I'm free." "Yeah. No bounty, no charges. I could go anywhere." Her chest tightened. "Yeah, you could." He was quiet for a long moment, then, "What if I don't want to go anywhere?" She looked at him. "What? What if I want to stay here? Fix the rest of the roof, build a proper chicken coop, teach Noah how to fish when the ice melts?" He met her eyes. "What if I want to try being the kind of man who stays?" Hope bloomed, fragile and terrifying. "Do you?" "I don't know how to be that person. I don't know how to let someone stay. Guess we'll figure it out together. Together's hard." "Yeah, it is." Noah tugged on both their hands. "Does this mean Mr. Rhett's staying forever?" Rhett looked at Alara. She looked back. "Yeah, kid," Rhett said, voice rough. "I think it does." Noah whooped, ran circles in the snow, shouting with joy. And Alara let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe happy endings existed after all, even for broken people who'd forgotten how to hope. The happiness lasted exactly 4 days. 4 days of Rhett teaching Noah how to properly stack firewood while Alara watched from the window, coffee warming her hands. 4 days of meals that felt almost normal, conversations that didn't carry the weight of impending disaster. 4 days of Rhett sleeping in the barn because neither of them knew what came next, what they were supposed to be to each other now that survival wasn't the only thing holding them together. On the 5th day, a rider came from town. Not a marshal this time. Just a kid, maybe 15, on a tired horse. He handed Alara a folded paper, tipped his hat, and left before she could ask questions. The paper was official. Territorial court seal, fancy letterhead, words that made her stomach drop. "What is it?" Rhett asked. He'd been repairing the chicken coop, hammer in hand, but he'd stopped the moment he saw her face. "It's from Klein's lawyer." Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "He's contesting the marshal's findings. Says the evidence was obtained illegally, that Charlotte had no right to her husband's records. He's demanding a formal hearing." "Can he do that?" "Apparently he can try." She read further, each word worse than the last. "The hearing's in 3 weeks. Until then, all property claims remain in dispute, which means the debt still stands," Rhett finished, "until a judge says otherwise." Noah appeared in the doorway, face bright with innocence. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, kid," Rhett said quickly. "Go practice your reading like we talked about." "But now, Noah." The boy's face fell, but he obeyed. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Alara crumpled the paper in her fist. "I thought it was over. I thought we were done fighting. Men like Klein don't quit just because they lose once." Rhett set down the hammer, crossed to her. "But we beat him before. We'll beat him again." "With what?" "We got lucky with Charlotte. Lightning doesn't strike twice." "Then we make our own luck." She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe in anything besides the crushing weight of reality. But hope felt dangerous now, like something that would get ripped away the moment she reached for it. That night she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cabin sounded like trouble arriving. Every gust of wind felt like the beginning of another storm. Around midnight she gave up, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and stepped outside. Rhett was sitting on the porch steps, whittling something in the moonlight. "You too?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah." She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. The contact felt deliberate, important in a way she didn't have words for. "What are you making?" she asked. He held up the piece of wood. It was taking shape, a small horse, rough but recognizable. "For Noah. Figured he'd like it." "He will." They sat in silence for a while, the knife scraping softly against wood. "I've been thinking," Rhett said finally, "about the hearing." "And?" "Klein's going to bring everything. Lawyers, witnesses, whatever it takes to make his case look legitimate. We need to do the same." "We can't afford lawyers." "No, but we can afford the truth." He paused, knife stilling. "People in town know what Klein is. They've seen what he does. If enough of them speak up, they won't. He owns half of them, and the other half are too scared to cross him." "Maybe. Or maybe they're just waiting for someone to go first. Alora wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. You're more optimistic than you look. I'm not optimistic. I'm desperate. There's a difference. She laughed, short and bitter. At least you're honest. It's all I know how to be. The silence returned, heavier this time. Alora pulled the blanket tighter, trying to trap warmth that kept escaping. Can I ask you something? Rhett said. Sure. That kiss, the other day. Did you mean it, or were you just scared? Her breath caught. She'd been trying not to think about it, about the way his hands had felt on her face, the way everything else had disappeared for just a moment. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe both. That's fair. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. He went back to whittling. I'm scared too, if it helps. Of what? Of wanting something I don't deserve. Of getting comfortable and forgetting that good things don't last for people like me. People like you? Killers, drifters, men with blood on their hands. She reached over, stilled his knife with her hand. You're not any of those things. Not anymore. Blood doesn't wash off, Ilara. Maybe not, but it doesn't define you either. She met his eyes. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who chooses to fix things even when it's easier to walk away. Someone who makes Noah laugh. Someone who stayed when every instinct probably told you to run. That doesn't erase Colorado. No, but it means you're more than your worst day. His throat worked, like he was swallowing words that hurt. I want to believe that. Then believe it. He set down the knife and the half-finished horse, turned to face her fully, moonlight catching the scars on his face, the exhaustion, the hope he was trying so hard to hide. If we survive this, he said quietly, if we get through the hearing and Klein and whatever else comes, I want to try. To be the kind of man who stays, who builds something real. With me? Yeah, with you. He hesitated. If you'll have me. The words hung in the cold air, fragile and terrifying. Ilara thought about Jonas, about the years of pain disguised as marriage, about how she'd sworn she'd never let another man close enough to hurt her, about how every instinct screamed that this was different, but instincts had been wrong before. Ask me again after we survive, she said. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. I'll take it. They sat there until the cold drove them inside, questions unanswered, future uncertain, but together in the uncertainty. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Charlotte visited 3 times, bringing documents, coaching them on what to expect at the hearing. She looked worse each visit, thinner, shadows under her eyes, the kind of exhaustion that came from fighting battles nobody else could see. Klein's lawyers are good, she warned during the last visit. They're going to paint my husband as a thief, me as a vindictive widow, you as squatters trying to steal land. Let them try, Ilara said. It's not about truth, Mrs. Vance. It's about who tells the better story. Rhett leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Then we need people who'll tell ours. You have anyone in mind? A few. He left the next morning before sunrise, took the horse, didn't say where he was going. Ilara tried not to panic, tried to trust that he'd come back. But the hours stretched, and doubt crept in like cold through cracks. He returned at dusk, not alone. Behind him rode 6 people. Ilara recognized some from town. The baker, the blacksmith's widow, a farmer whose land bordered what used to be Klein's territory. Others were strangers, weathered faces marked by hard lives. Who are they? She asked as Rhett dismounted. Witnesses? People Klein's heard over the years? People willing to talk. The baker stepped forward, a woman named Sarah, with flour-dusted hands and fire in her eyes. My husband borrowed money from Klein 5 years ago. When he couldn't pay, Klein burned our shop. Said it was an accident. It wasn't. The blacksmith's widow spoke next, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Klein wanted my land after my husband died. When I refused to sell, my well got poisoned. Took me 6 months to prove it wasn't natural. By then, I'd lost everything trying to survive. One by one, they told their stories. Each one a variation on the same theme. Klein taking, destroying, hiding behind lawyers and influence while real people suffered. Charlotte listened, scribbling notes, something like hope brightening her tired face. This is good. This is really good. Will it be enough? Ilara asked. I don't know, but it's more than we had yesterday. That night they fed everyone who'd come. It wasn't much. Stew stretched thin, bread that was mostly air, but nobody complained. They sat around the cabin, sharing food and stories, building something that felt almost like solidarity. Noah sat in Rhett's lap, half asleep, completely content. Sarah's daughter, a girl about Noah's age, played with the wooden horse Rhett had finished. The farmer's son taught them a card game that involved more laughing than actual rules. For a moment, Alara let herself imagine this was permanent, that these people weren't just witnesses, but friends, that the cabin could hold joy instead of just survival. Then reality crashed back in. 3 days until the hearing. 3 days to prepare for a fight they might not win. The morning they left for town, snow started falling again. Not a blizzard this time, just steady, quiet, blanketing everything in white. Noah cried when Alara told him he had to stay with Sarah. I want to come with you. I know, sweetheart, but this is grown-up business. What if you don't come back? The question hit like a fist. Alara knelt, pulled him close. We're coming back, I promise. You can't promise that. He was right, she couldn't. But she said it anyway because sometimes lies were kinder than truth. Rhett ruffled Noah's hair, voice gentle. You keep an eye on things here, okay? Make sure the chickens don't stage a revolt. Noah giggled despite his tears. Chickens can't revolt. You sure about that? I've seen some pretty suspicious-looking chickens. You're silly. Yeah, I am. Rhett's smile didn't reach his eyes. Be good, kid. The ride to town took 4 hours. Charlotte met them at the courthouse, along with the witnesses Rhett had gathered. The building loomed, stone and authority, the kind of place that made people feel small on purpose. Inside, the courtroom was already packed. Klein sat at the front, flanked by 3 lawyers in expensive suits. He looked calm, confident, like this was already decided. When his eyes met Alara's, he smiled. She wanted to put a bullet in that smile. The judge entered, an older man named Thornton, gray-haired and stern, with a reputation for fairness that Alara prayed was deserved. This is a hearing to determine the validity of claims made by Mr. Darius Klein regarding property ownership and outstanding debts, Thornton said, voice carrying across the silent room. Both parties will present evidence. I will make a determination based on territorial law. We'll begin with Mr. Klein's representation. The lead lawyer stood, a man named Hutchins with a voice like honey over glass. Your Honor, this is a simple matter of contract law. Mr. Jonas Vance borrowed $1,200 from my client with the express agreement that the debt would transfer to his estate upon his death. Mrs. Vance, as his widow, inherited both the property and the obligations attached to it. He presented documents, loan agreements, signatures, witness statements. Everything looked official, legitimate, damning. Furthermore, Hutchins continued, Mrs. Vance has failed to make any payment on this debt. Under territorial law, that constitutes default, which entitles my client to claim the property as collateral. Charlotte stood. Your Honor, if I may, those documents are forgeries. The signature on the loan agreement doesn't match Jonas Vance's signature on his marriage certificate or land deed. We have samples for comparison. She presented her own documents. Alara held her breath. Judge Thornton examined both sets, expression unreadable. The signatures do appear inconsistent. With respect, Your Honor, Hutchins said smoothly, signature variance is common, especially when documents are signed years apart. This proves nothing. It proves reasonable doubt, Charlotte shot back. It proves desperation. Hutchins gestured toward Alara. Mrs. Vance is a widow with no means to pay a legitimate debt. Rather than accept responsibility, she's engaged in a campaign of defamation against a respected businessman. Respected? Charlotte's voice rose. Your Honor, we have testimony from 6 individuals who can speak to Mr. Klein's pattern of fraudulent lending practices. Hearsay and slander, Hutchins interrupted, none of which is relevant to the specific contract in question. The judge raised a hand. I'll hear the testimony, then I'll decide what's relevant. One by one, the witnesses spoke. Sarah told her story, voice shaking but clear. The blacksmith's widow followed, then the farmer, each one building a picture of systematic abuse. Klein's lawyers objected to everything. Irrelevant, inadmissible, prejudicial. Judge Thornton allowed it all, but his expression gave nothing away. When it was Alara's turn, she stood on legs that felt like water. Mrs. Vance, Thornton said, did your husband ever mention this debt to you? No, sir. Did you find any documentation of it among his effects after his death? No, sir. And yet Mr. Klein claims it's legitimate. Can you explain that? She looked at Klein, at his smug certainty, and something inside her snapped. My husband was a drunk and a bastard, she said, voice hard. But he wasn't secretive about money. He spent every cent we had on whiskey and gambling. If he'd borrowed $1,200, I would have known, because there would have been something to show for it. New equipment, livestock, something. There was nothing. This debt is a lie, and everyone in this room knows it. Silence. Hutchins recovered first. Your Honor, Mrs. Vance's emotional state is completely understandable, Thornton cut him off. He looked at Alara with something that might have been respect. Thank you, Mrs. Vance. You may sit. The hearing dragged on for hours. Arguments, counter-arguments, legal minutiae that made Alara's head spin. Rhett sat beside her, silent and tense, hands clenched into fists. Finally, as afternoon bled into evening, Thornton called for a recess. I'll issue my decision tomorrow morning, he said. Court is adjourned. Everyone stood. Alara's legs nearly gave out. Outside, Charlotte looked grim. It could go either way. What are our chances? Honestly, 50-50. Maybe less. Alara closed her eyes, exhaustion and fear warring for dominance. Rhett's hand found hers, squeezed once. We did everything we could. It might not be enough. Then we deal with that tomorrow. They found rooms at the boarding house, separate, because propriety still mattered even when the world was ending. Alara lay awake all night, staring at cracks in the ceiling, imagining a future where she lost everything. Somewhere down the hall, she heard Rhett pacing. At dawn, they returned to the courthouse. The room was packed again, tension thick enough to choke on. Judge Thornton entered, holding a single sheet of paper. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony, he said without preamble. This is my determination. Alara's heart hammered so hard she thought everyone could hear it. The loan documents presented by Mr. Klein show clear signs of forgery. The signature variants, combined with the lack of any corroborating evidence or witnesses to the original transaction, cast significant doubt on their authenticity. Klein's face went red. Furthermore, Thornton continued, the pattern of behavior described by multiple witnesses suggests a systematic fraud operation. While those testimonies don't directly prove this specific case, they establish reasonable suspicion. Charlotte gripped Alara's arm, fingers tight. Therefore, I find in favor of Mrs. Alara Vance. The debt is declared invalid. All claims to her property are dismissed. The room erupted. Klein shot to his feet, shouting something Alara couldn't hear over the blood roaring in her ears. She turned to Rhett. He was staring at her like he couldn't quite believe what he'd heard. We won, she whispered. Yeah, we did. Then his arms were around her, and she was crying into his chest, and nothing else mattered. They left the courthouse an hour later, documents signed, ownership secured, Klein still screaming threats that nobody was listening to anymore. Charlotte walked them to their horses, exhaustion and triumph mixing on her face. He'll appeal. He'll cause trouble. But you won the fight that matters. Thank you, Alara said, for everything. Thank my husband. He's the one who had the courage to stand up first. Charlotte's eyes were wet. I just finished what he started. They rode back through falling snow, the world white and clean and new. Halfway home, Rhett pulled his horse to a stop. What's wrong? Alara asked. Nothing, just... He looked at her, something raw in his expression. You asked me to ask you again, after we survived. Her breath caught. We survived, he said quietly. So I'm asking, will you let me stay? Really stay? Not just until the next crisis, but for whatever comes next. Good, bad, boring, terrifying, all of it. She thought about all the reasons to say no, about Jonas, about trust broken and scars that didn't heal, about how staying meant risking everything on someone who might leave anyway. But she also thought about Rhett teaching Noah to cook eggs, about his hands fixing things instead of breaking them, about the way he looked at her like she was worth fighting for. Yes, she said. His eyes widened. Yeah? Yeah. He dismounted so fast he nearly fell. crossed to her horse, pulled her down into his arms, kissed her like they had all the time in the world and none of it to waste. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm going to mess this up," he said. "Probably. So will I. We're both disasters." "Yeah, we are. But we're disasters together. Together's terrifying." "I know." He smiled, real and unguarded and beautiful. "But I'm willing to try if you are." She kissed him again, softer this time, an answer without words. They rode the rest of the way home in silence, hands linked between their horses. When they crested the hill and saw the cabin, lights glowing, Noah visible through the window waiting for them, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Like maybe she was finally home, not the building, not the land, the people inside it. That night, after Noah had finally fallen asleep, after they'd told him everything, and he'd cried happy tears and made them promise 100 times they were staying, Alara and Rhett sat on the porch again. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know. Fix the barn? Plant crops in spring? Teach Noah how to fish?" "Sounds boring." "Yeah, it does." He looked at her. "You okay with boring?" "I think boring might be exactly what I need." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. The wind picked up, carrying the promise of more snow. But inside the cabin, warmth glowed, safety, something that might turn into love if they were careful with it. Rhett stood, offered his hand. "Come on, it's cold out here." She took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. Before they went inside, she looked back at the darkness beyond the cabin, at the world that had tried so hard to break her. "We really did it," she said softly. "Yeah, we really did." And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Alara believed in tomorrow. Tomorrow turned out to be harder than either of them expected. The first week after the hearing felt like walking through a dream. No debt, no Klein, no bounty hunters. Just normal life, whatever that meant. Alara kept waiting for something to go wrong, for the other boot to drop, because in her experience good things didn't last. Rhett moved his belongings from the barn to the cabin. Not into her room, they weren't ready for that, might never be, but into the small space off the kitchen that Jonas had used for storing tools. It took him less than an hour. Everything he owned fit in a single bag. "That's it?" Alara asked, watching him set a worn shirt on the makeshift shelf. "Never saw the point in collecting things. Harder to run when you're carrying weight." "You're not running anymore." "I know." He looked at the shelf, at the shirt, at the permanence of it. "Doesn't mean I know how to stop thinking like I might have to." Noah loved having Rhett inside. He'd wake up early, pat into the kitchen, and start chattering before Rhett had even finished his coffee. Questions about everything: why the sky was blue, how fish breathed underwater, whether chickens dreamed. Rhett answered each one with patience that seemed endless, until Alara realized it wasn't patience. He genuinely enjoyed it. "You're good with him," she said one morning after Noah had run outside to check on the chickens. "He's easy." "He's not. He asks a million questions and never sits still and gets into everything." "Yeah, that's what makes him easy. He's honest about what he wants. No games, no hidden agendas." Rhett poured more coffee, hands steady. "Adults could learn something from that." "Is that a dig at me?" "It's a dig at everyone, including me." She wanted to argue, but he was right. They were both so careful with each other, every word measured, every touch deliberate, like they were made of glass and one wrong move would shatter everything. That night, after Noah went to bed, they sat at the table with the remains of dinner between them. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable but full of things neither knew how to say. "This is weird," Alara finally said. "Yeah. We survived everything, Klein, the hearing, bounty hunters, and now we're just sitting here like strangers." "We kind of are strangers. We've known each other less than a month." "Feels longer." "Yeah, it does." Rhett pushed food around his plate. "You want to know something stupid?" "Always." "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I spent 5 years running, and before that I was drifting, taking jobs wherever I could find them. I've never just..." He gestured vaguely at the cabin, at the life around them. "Stayed. Built something. I don't know the first thing about it." "Neither do I. Jonas didn't exactly leave a manual on how to run a homestead. So we're both making this up as we go." "Guess so." They looked at each other across the table, both lost, both trying, both terrified they'd fail. We could ask for help, Rhett said. Charlotte mentioned there are folks in town who know about farming, raising livestock, all of it. I hate asking for help. Yeah, me too, but pride's expensive. Can't afford it right now. She knew he was right, hated it, but knew it. The next day, they rode into town together. It was the first time Alara had been back since the hearing, and she felt eyes on her the moment they arrived. Some looks were curious, others hostile. Klein still had friends, and word traveled fast. They found Charlotte at the general store, looking less exhausted than before, but still carrying weight in her eyes. Mrs. Vance, Mr. Calder, she smiled, genuine. Good to see you both. We need advice, Alara said, about running the property. We're in over our heads. Charlotte's smile widened. That's the smartest thing I've heard all week. Come on, I know some people. She introduced them to a farmer named Samuel Grant, a grizzled man in his 60s with hands like tree bark and eyes that missed nothing. He listened while Alara explained their situation, the land, the chickens, the complete lack of knowledge about what to do with any of it. You got fertile ground, Samuel said. Good water access, decent shelter for animals. What you don't got is experience, but that's fixable. How? Rhett asked. Work, learning, failing a few times until you figure it out. He squinted at them. You willing to fail? Don't have much choice, Alara said. Good. That's the right attitude. Too many folks think farming's romantic. It ain't. It's dirt and sweat and watching crops die because the rain came at the wrong time. But if you're stubborn enough, you can make it work. He spent the next hour giving them information. What to plant in spring, how to rotate crops, which animals were worth the trouble and which weren't. Alara's head spun trying to remember it all. Write it down, Samuel said, noticing. Nobody remembers everything first time. And come find me when you got questions. I'll help where I can. Why? Rhett asked. You don't know us. No, but I know Klein, and anyone who beat him deserves a fighting chance. Samuel's expression hardened. Besides, this valley needs more folks willing to stand up. Maybe you'll inspire others. They left town with notebooks full of scribbled information and something that felt almost like community. The work started immediately. Rhett threw himself into it with single-minded focus. Like if he stopped moving, he'd remember he didn't know what he was doing. He repaired every broken fence post, rebuilt the chicken coop from scratch, started clearing land for spring planting even though the ground was still frozen. Alara watched him work himself to exhaustion, saw the way he pushed through pain when his shoulder bothered him, the old injury from whatever had happened before Colorado. She wanted to tell him to slow down, but she understood the drive. If you kept busy enough, you didn't have time to think about how fragile everything was. Noah tried to help, following Rhett everywhere, mimicking his movements. The boy's hero worship was complete and absolute, and Alara didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. What happened when Rhett inevitably let him down? Because everyone did, eventually. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The routine settled into something almost normal. Wake up, breakfast, work, dinner, sleep. The days blurred together. Then Charlotte arrived unannounced, face pale, hands shaking. Klein's dead, she said without preamble. Alara's coffee cup slipped, hit the table, shattered. What? They found him this morning, in his house. Shot once, close range. Rhett appeared in the doorway, covered in sawdust from the barn. Who did it? They don't know. No witnesses, no forced entry. Whoever did it, Klein let them in. Which means he knew them, Alara said. Yeah. Charlotte's hands twisted together. The sheriff's investigating. He's already been asking questions in town about who had reason to want Klein dead. The implication hung heavy in the air. He thinks we did it, Rhett said flatly. He thinks everyone did it. Klein had enemies everywhere, but yes, you're on the list. Alara's stomach turned. We were here, all night, together. Can anyone verify that? Noah. But he's 7. I don't think that counts. Charlotte sat heavily in the nearest chair. I'm sorry, I just wanted to warn you. The sheriff will probably come by soon. She was right. He arrived that afternoon, not Morris, who was still under investigation for his cooperation with Klein, but a new man named Pike. Young, ambitious, with the kind of certainty that came from never having been wrong yet. Mrs. Vance, Mr. Calder. Pike stood in the doorway, hat in hand, polite but cold. I need to ask you some questions about Darius Klein. We heard he's dead, Alara said. Yes, ma'am. Murdered. And given your recent legal troubles with him, we won that case, Rhett interrupted. I'm aware, but winning a case and holding a grudge aren't mutually exclusive. We didn't kill him, Alara said. Can you prove that? Where were you last night between the hours of 8 and midnight? Here, on the property. Together? Yes. Pike's gaze shifted between them, calculating. All night? The whole time? Alara's face heated. Yes. And can anyone verify that besides each other? Noah was here, but he was asleep. Why does it matter? We didn't do anything wrong. I'm just gathering information, ma'am, for the record. Pike scribbled something in a notebook. Mr. Calder, you were wanted for murder not too long ago. Charges dropped, but still, history's there. Rhett's expression went stone cold. That was ruled justified. Yes, sir. Just noting the pattern. There's no pattern. I didn't kill Klein, and neither did she. I believe you, but belief's not evidence. Pike closed his notebook. I'll need you both to stay in the area. Don't leave town without notifying me first. He left, polite and threatening in equal measure. Alara waited until he was out of sight before she started shaking. This is happening again. We just got free, and now, hey! Rhett crossed to her, took her shoulders gently. We didn't do anything. We'll be fine. You don't know that. No, but panicking won't help. She wanted to scream at him, at the unfairness of it all, at the universe that kept throwing disasters at them, like they were target practice. But Noah was watching from the corner, eyes wide, and she swallowed it down. You're right, she said. We'll be fine. She didn't believe it. The next week was tense. Pike came by twice more, asking the same questions in slightly different ways, like he was trying to catch them in a lie. Other people from town started avoiding them, crossing the street when they saw Alara coming, conversation stopping when Rhett entered the general store. Suspicion spread like disease, and there was no cure for it. People think we did it, Alara said one night, staring at the ceiling while Rhett sat nearby whittling another figure for Noah. People are scared. When someone like Klein dies, everyone wonders if they're next. That doesn't make it okay. No, but it makes it understandable. She rolled onto her side, looked at him in the lamplight. Doesn't it bother you, being accused of something you didn't do? Yeah. But I've been accused of a lot of things, some true, some not. Either way, getting angry about it doesn't change anything. How are you so calm? I'm not calm. I'm tired. He set down the knife, met her eyes. I spent 5 years being angry at Mercer, at the system that protected him, at myself for killing him even though I'd do it again. The anger didn't help, just made everything harder. So you just let it go? I'm trying to. Some days are easier than others. She sat up, pulled her knees to her chest. I don't know how to do that. Let things go. I'm still angry at Jonas, and he's been dead for months. That's different. He hurt you for years. That kind of anger doesn't disappear overnight. Does it disappear at all? I don't know. Maybe it just gets quieter. They sat in silence, both carrying weight they didn't know how to set down. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Charlotte arrived a week later with news. They found the gun that killed Klein. Where? Rhett asked. In the home of Marcus Hale. He's one of Klein's former business partners. Apparently they had a falling out last year. Hale thought Klein cheated him out of a gold claim. So Hale did it? He confessed this morning, said Klein deserved it, that he'd destroy everyone he touched and someone had to stop him. Charlotte's expression was complicated, relief mixed with something darker. Pike's dropping the investigation into you two. You're clear. Alara should have felt relief, should have felt vindicated. Instead, she just felt hollow. That's it, she said. We're just clear? After weeks of being treated like criminals? That's how it works, Charlotte said gently. People will forget. Move on to the next crisis. And we're supposed to just forgive them? No, but holding on to anger will only hurt you. Trust me, I know. After Charlotte left, Alara sat on the porch, staring at nothing. Rhett joined her, didn't speak, just sat close enough that their shoulders touched. I'm tired, Alara said finally. I know. I thought winning the hearing would fix everything, that we'd just get to live. But it's one thing after another, Klein's murder, the investigation, people treating us like... Her voice cracked. When does it end? I don't think it does. Not completely. There's always something. That's a depressing thought. Maybe, but it also means the good stuff keeps coming too. It's not all disasters. She looked at him. You really believe that? I'm trying to. Noah burst out of the cabin, holding up the latest wooden figure Rhett had made, a bear, crude but recognizable. Look, Mr. Rhett made me a bear. Can he make a whole forest? We'll see, kid, Rhett said, but he was smiling. Noah climbed into Alar's lap, completely trusting, completely content. She wrapped her arms around him, felt his heartbeat against her chest, and something in her eased slightly. This was worth fighting for. The winter slowly released its grip, snow melted, mud appeared, and with it, the reality of spring planting. Samuel Grant visited regularly, teaching them everything from soil preparation to seed selection. He was patient when they made mistakes, and they made plenty. Rhett planted an entire row too deep. Alara watered another section until it flooded. Noah accidentally let the chickens into the garden and they destroyed half the seedlings. But they learned, adjusted, tried again. Farming's just controlled failure, Samuel said, watching them work. You fail small, learn, and try not to fail the same way twice. Sounds exhausting, Alara said, wiping sweat from her forehead. It is, but it's also the most honest work there is. You put in effort, the land gives back. Simple as that. Nothing about it felt simple. But slowly, painfully, things started growing. Green shoots appeared where they'd planted. The chickens laid eggs consistently. Greta, the ancient horse, seemed healthier with regular care. And somewhere in the routine of daily survival, Alara and Rhett found a rhythm. They still slept in separate rooms, still danced around bigger questions. But there were moments, hands brushing while washing dishes, shared looks across the dinner table, the way Rhett always made sure she ate enough. That felt like building toward something. One evening, after an especially long day of planting, Alara found Rhett sitting outside watching the sunset. You okay? She asked. Yeah, just thinking. About? About how I got here. All the choices that led to this porch, this view, you. He glanced at her. Seems impossible looking back, like I should have ended up somewhere completely different. Where? Dead, probably. Or in prison. Or still running. But you're not. No, I'm not. He stood, faced her fully. And I need you to know something. I'm not good at this, at talking about feelings or whatever. But I need to say it anyway. Her heart hammered. Okay. I love you. The words hung in the air, simple and terrifying. Alara's breath caught. She'd known, on some level, had felt it in the way he looked at her, the way he stayed when leaving would have been easier. But hearing it out loud was different. You don't have to say it back, Rhett continued quickly. I just needed you to know, because I've spent my whole life running from anything that mattered, and I don't want to run from this. From you. She stepped closer, close enough to see the fear in his eyes, the hope he was trying to hide. I don't know if I love you yet, she said honestly. I think I might, but I've been wrong before, and the stakes feel really high. That's fair. But I want to find out. I want to try. Yeah? Yeah. He smiled, real and unguarded, and pulled her into a hug. She let herself sink into it, into the warmth and safety and possibility. Behind them, Noah made gagging sounds from the doorway. Are you going to kiss again? Because last time was gross. Alara laughed despite herself. Go inside, Noah. But, inside. The boy grumbled, but obeyed. Rhett looked down at her. Think you'll get used to it? Eventually, maybe. Good enough for me. They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the world quiet except for the wind and distant bird calls. For the first time in longer than Alara could remember, the quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt like peace. That night she lay in bed listening to the sounds of the cabin settling. Rhett moving around in the next room, Noah's soft breathing from his corner, the wind against the walls. She thought about Jonas, about the years of pain and fear, about how she'd thought she'd never trust anyone again. But Rhett was different. Not perfect. He had scars and demons, and moments where he pulled away without meaning to. But he was trying. They both were. And maybe that was enough. Maybe trying was all anyone could do. She fell asleep thinking about spring planting, about green shoots pushing through dark soil, about things growing despite impossible odds, about building a life one day at a time, about believing finally that she deserved one. Spring came slowly, then all at once. One morning, Alara woke to find the world transformed, green pushing through brown earth, birds returning with songs she'd forgotten existed, air that didn't cut like knives when you breathed it. The land looked nothing like the frozen wasteland Rhett had stumbled into months ago. She stood on the porch with coffee warming her hands, watching him work in the field with Noah trailing behind. The boy was supposed to be planting seeds in straight rows. Instead, he was making patterns, circles, zigzags, whatever his 7-year-old brain thought looked interesting. Rhett noticed but didn't correct him, just adjusted his own planting to compensate. That was the thing about Rhett she was still learning. He didn't demand perfection, didn't expect people to fit into boxes they weren't shaped for. He just worked around the chaos and made it functional. "You're staring again," Charlotte said from behind her. Alara jumped, nearly spilling coffee. "When did you get here?" 5 minutes ago. You were too busy watching your man to notice." "He's not my—" She stopped. "Okay, maybe he is. I don't know what we are." Charlotte smiled, settling into the chair beside her. "You're two broken people trying to be less broken together. That's what you are." "That's depressing." "It's honest, and honesty's better than the alternative." Charlotte's expression shifted, something heavier settling in. "I came to say goodbye." "What? Why?" "I'm leaving. Going east. My sister's buried here. My husband too, but I can't stay anymore. Too many ghosts." Alara's chest tightened. "Charlotte, you don't have to—" "I do. I've been fighting Klein's memory for 3 years. Even with him dead, I see him everywhere. I need a fresh start." She reached over, squeezed Alara's hand. "You understand that, don't you? Needing to walk away from something even when people say you should stay?" She did. She'd wanted to leave after Jonas died, but had nowhere to go and no money to get there. Charlotte had both. "I'm going to miss you," Alara said, throat tight. "All right, and if you ever need anything, legal help, a place to hide, someone to vouch for you, you let me know." They hugged, long and fierce, two women who'd survived things they shouldn't have and came out the other side harder but still standing. Charlotte left an hour later, her wagon packed with everything she owned, heading toward a future Alara hoped was kinder than her past. Rhett came back from the field as the dust settled. "She gone?" "Yeah." "You okay?" "I don't know. Feels like everyone leaves eventually." He set down the tools, crossed to her. "I'm still here. For now." "No. Not for now. For however long you'll let me stay." His hands found hers, rough and warm and steady. "I know your history. I know why you don't trust permanence. But I'm not Jonas, and I'm not leaving unless you tell me to." She wanted to believe him. Every part of her that was still capable of hope wanted to grab onto those words and never let go. "Ask me in a year," she said. "I will. And the year after that, and the one after that, until you finally believe me." Noah's voice cut through the moment. "The chickens are out again." They both turned to see the birds scattered across the yard, pecking at newly planted seeds. "I'll get them," Rhett said, already moving. Alara watched him chase chickens with Noah, both of them laughing, covered in dirt and completely unconcerned with dignity. And she thought maybe, just maybe, this was what happiness looked like when you'd forgotten what it felt like. The summer brought heat and work and small victories that felt monumental when you'd spent so long just surviving. The crops grew, not perfectly, but enough. They lost half the tomatoes to beetles and a quarter of the corn to something Samuel said was probably crows, but might have been raccoons. But the rest survived, thrived even, and by mid-July they had vegetables to eat and some to sell in town. The first time Alara took produce to market, she stood at her stall feeling exposed and vulnerable. People stared. Some whispered. Others crossed to the other side of the street, still convinced she'd had something to do with Klein's death, despite Hale's confession. But others stopped. Bought tomatoes and squash and corn, paid fair prices and thanked her for her service on the town council. She'd been appointed after the hearing, reluctantly, because someone needed to fill the seat Klein had left empty. "You're doing good work," an older woman said, counting out coins for a basket of beans. "My daughter's one of the widows your fund helped. She's got a roof over her head now because of you.
Alara didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to accept gratitude when she'd only done what seemed obvious. Help people who needed helping. Thank you, she managed. The woman smiled, tired but genuine. No, thank you. That night, Alara counted the money from the market. $43. It wasn't much compared to what they needed, but it was theirs. Earned through work, not inherited or stolen or granted by someone else's mercy.
Rhett found her at the table, organizing coins into neat stacks. Good day? He asked. Yeah, really good. She looked up at him. I forgot what this felt like. Building something. Having people thank me instead of fear me or hate me. You deserve it. I don't know about deserve, but I'll take it. He pulled out a chair, sat across from her. I need to tell you something. Her stomach dropped. That sounds ominous. It's not. At least I hope it's not. He rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable. A man came by the mine today. Federal surveyor. Says there might be more silver on the claim than we thought. A lot more. How much more? Enough that we could hire a proper crew, expand operations, maybe make real money instead of just scraping by. She should have been excited, should have felt relief. Instead, she felt fear creeping in, cold and familiar. What's the catch? She asked. No catch, just opportunity. But it means decisions. Whether to expand, how fast, who to trust with the work. Big decisions. You're good at those. I'm good at following orders and fixing things that are already broken. This is different. This is building something from nothing. I don't know if I'm the right person for it. Alara reached across the table, took his hand. You rebuilt this entire homestead. You helped me survive a legal battle I had no business winning. You turned Noah from a scared, sick kid into someone who laughs every day. You're exactly the right person. What if I mess it up? Then we fix it, together. That's what we do. He squeezed her hand, gratitude and fear mixing in his expression. Okay, together. Noah shot up 3 inches that summer and lost 2 teeth. He followed Rhett everywhere, mimicking his walk, his speech patterns, his careful way of approaching problems. It would have been concerning if it weren't so obviously born from love. One night after dinner, Noah looked up from his plate with complete seriousness. Mr. Rhett? Yeah, kid? Are you going to marry Miss Alara? Alara choked on her water. Rhett's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Where'd that come from, Chuck? He asked. Jimmy at school says when grown-ups live together, they're supposed to get married. Otherwise, it's sinful. Jimmy's an idiot, Alara said. Miss Alara, that's a bad word. It's accurate. She looked at Rhett, who looked back with an expression caught between panic and amusement. We're not getting married. Why not? Because we haven't talked about it. So talk about it now. It doesn't work like that, Noah. Why not? Rhett set down his fork. Because marriage is complicated. It's not just about living together or caring about someone. It's a promise that you'll stay even when things get hard, and both people have to want it for the right reasons. Do you want it? The question hung in the air, honest and direct the way only children could manage. Rhett looked at Alara, something vulnerable in his eyes. Yeah, I do. But it's not just about what I want. Noah turned to Alara. Do you want it? She fumbled, caught completely off guard. I don't know, maybe. Eventually. That sounds like yes. It sounds like complicated. Grown-ups make everything complicated, Noah declared, returning to his dinner like he'd solved the world's problems. That night, after Noah fell asleep, Alara and Rhett sat outside under stars so bright they looked unreal. Sorry about earlier, Rhett said. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. You didn't. Noah did. Still.
Did you mean it? What you said? He was quiet for a long moment. Yeah, I meant it, but I also meant the part about both people wanting it for the right reasons. I don't want you to marry me because Noah thinks you should, or because it's what people expect, or because you're scared of being alone. Then why would I marry you? Because you actually want to, because you've decided I'm worth the risk. He turned to face her. And I don't know if we're there yet. Maybe we never will be, but I'd rather wait for real than settle for convenient. She studied his face in the starlight, the scars, the exhaustion, the hope he tried so hard to hide. I'm terrified, she admitted. Of what? Of wanting this. Of letting myself believe it could work.
of waking up one day and realizing I was wrong about you.
You might be wrong about me. I might disappoint you. Might mess up in ways we can't even imagine yet.
That's not reassuring. It's honest. We're both disasters, Alara. We're always going to be disasters. The question is whether we want to be disasters together or separately. She laughed despite herself. You have a terrible way with words. I know. It's one of my many flaws. I don't want to marry you, she said. His face fell for just a second before she continued. Not yet. Not because I don't care about you, but because I need time. To figure out who I am outside of survival mode. To learn how to be with someone without constantly waiting for them to hurt me. How much time? I don't know. Ask me again in a year. Seems to be our answer to everything. It's working so far. He pulled her close, and she let herself sink into the warmth of him, the steadiness she was slowly learning to trust. I can wait, he said quietly. I've got nowhere else to be. August brought another test, the kind that reminded them progress wasn't linear and peace was always temporary. A stranger rode onto the property one afternoon, tall and lean, with a marshal's badge glinting in the sun. Alara's heart stopped. Rhett went still in that dangerous way she'd only seen a few times. Can I help you? Alara called, hand drifting toward the rifle leaning against the porch. The marshal dismounted, hands visible, non-threatening. Looking for Rhett Calder. What for? Rhett stepped forward, positioning himself between the marshal and the cabin where Noah was inside. I'm Marshal Thomas Webb, Charlotte Webb's cousin. The tension shifted but didn't disappear. Charlotte asked me to check on you folks, Webb continued. Make sure you weren't having any trouble after everything with Klein. We're fine, Alara said. Glad to hear it. She also wanted me to deliver this. He pulled an envelope from his coat, handed it to Rhett. Said you'd know what it meant. Rhett opened it, read quickly, expression unreadable. Then he laughed, short, surprised, real. What is it? Alara asked. Charlotte found the mining claim Klein cheated Marcus Hale out of. Turns out it's legitimate. She's signing her rights over to us. What? Why? Says here she doesn't need it where she's going. Figures we could use the money more than her. He looked up at Webb. This legal? Completely. I verified everything myself. The claim's worth about $8,000, give or take. Alara's legs nearly gave out. $8,000. That was more money than she'd seen in her entire life. There's a catch, Webb continued. You've got to work the claim, maintain it. Can't just sell it off immediately. But after a year, it's yours to do with as you please. Rhett stared at the paper like it might disappear. I don't understand. Why would she do this? Because you helped her when nobody else would. Because she believes in paying debts. Webb smiled. And because she thinks you two are good people who deserve a chance. After Webb left, Alara and Rhett sat on the porch in stunned silence. $8,000, she finally said. Yeah. That's everything. We could expand the farm, buy proper equipment, build a real school for Noah, actually have savings in case something goes wrong. Yeah. She looked at him. You don't seem happy. I am. I'm just trying to figure out what I did to deserve it. Maybe you don't have to deserve it. Maybe sometimes good things just happen. That hasn't been my experience. Mine either. But maybe we're due. He pulled her close, and they sat there watching the sun set over land that was theirs. Completely and legally theirs. With a future that was starting to look less terrifying and more possible. The fall was busy in ways that made the spring planning look simple. They worked the mining claim, turned out to be silver, good quality, enough to validate Charlotte's appraisal, and then some. Rhett hired 2 men from town to help with the actual mining while he managed operations. It was hard work, complicated, frustrating. Numbers and logistics and problems he'd never encountered before. He loved it. Never thought I'd be good at this, he said one night, reviewing ledgers by lamplight. Managing people, keeping records. Feels too normal. You're allowed to be normal, Alara said. Doesn't feel like it sometimes. Like I'm waiting for someone to realize I don't belong here. You belong here more than anyone. Noah agreed. The boy had started calling Rhett Pa when he thought nobody was listening. Rhett never corrected him, but Alara saw the way his eyes got wet every time he heard it. She also saw the fear. The way Rhett would pull back sometimes, distance himself like he was preparing for the inevitable moment when Noah realized he'd attached himself to the wrong person.
One Saturday afternoon, Alara found Rhett in the barn, staring at nothing. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing." "That's a lie." He sighed, rubbed his face. "Noah called me Pa again today. To my face this time. Just casual, like it was the most natural thing in the world." "And that's a problem?" "Yeah, no, I don't know." He stood, started pacing. "What happens when he finds out what I really am? When he's old enough to understand that I killed a man? That I spent years running from the law? What happens when he realizes his hero is just a murderer with a convenient excuse? He'll realize that people are complicated, that good people sometimes do terrible things for the right reasons. That loving someone doesn't mean ignoring their past, it means accepting all of them. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying and messy, and you might lose him anyway, but you might not. And the only way to find out is to let him keep loving you." Rhett stopped pacing, looked at her with something raw in his expression. "What if I'm not worth it?" "You are. And someday you'll believe that."
He crossed to her, pulled her into a hug that felt desperate. She held him, this big, scarred man who was learning how to be soft again, and thought about how courage came in unexpected forms. One Saturday, Samuel Grant visited with news that changed everything again. "Town's talking about electing a new mayor," he said over coffee. "Morris is gone, Pike transferred to another territory, and folks want someone local who actually gives a damn." "Good," Alara said. "Who are they considering?"
"You." She laughed, then stopped when she realized he was serious. "Me? I'm a widow who barely knows how to run her own property. You're a woman who stood up to Klein when nobody else would, who fought the system and won. Who's building something real out here?" Samuel leaned forward. "People respect that. They need that. I can't be mayor. I don't know the first thing about politics. Nobody does until they try. Think about it, at least."
She did think about it, thought about it for days, turning the idea over in her mind like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit anywhere. "What do you think?" she asked Rhett one night. "I think you'd be good at it." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got. This is your decision, Alara, not mine. But it would affect you too, both of you. And we'd deal with it, same way we deal with everything else." She looked at Noah, asleep in his corner, completely trusting that the adults in his life would figure things out. "I want to try," she said finally. "I'm terrified and have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to try." Rhett smiled. "Good. You'll be great." "You don't know that." "Yeah, I do." The election happened in November, on a cold day that reminded everyone winter was coming whether they were ready or not. Alara stood outside the polling station, watching people file in to cast their votes. Some smiled at her, others scowled. A few looked uncertain, like they wanted to support her but weren't sure if it was safe. She understood that feeling intimately. By evening, the votes were counted. Alara won by a margin that surprised everyone, including herself. 63% of the vote. Not a landslide, but solid enough to feel legitimate. Her first act as mayor was to establish a fund for widows and orphans, people like her and Noah who'd been left behind by circumstance and cruelty. She used half the mining proceeds to seed it, challenged others to contribute. They did. Not everyone, but enough. Within a month, the fund had $2,000. Within 3, it had helped 8 families avoid homelessness. Her second act was to fire the corrupt county clerk who'd helped Klein forge documents for years. He screamed about injustice and unfair treatment. She ignored him and hired a young woman from Denver who'd passed the territorial exam with perfect marks. Her third act was to break down crying in Rhett's arms, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility she'd somehow taken on. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "Yeah, you can. I'm going to fail. I'm going to let everyone down." "Probably, at some point. That's what happens when you try things that matter." He pulled back, looked at her seriously. "But you'll also succeed. You'll help people. You'll make things better. And on the days you can't, you'll have us to help carry the weight." "Us?" "Me and Noah. We're in this together, remember?" She remembered. And slowly, the panic eased. Being mayor turned out to be exactly as hard as she'd feared and completely different than she'd imagined. There were budget meetings and disputes over water rights and endless complaints about things she had no power to fix. But there were also moments of real change. A new schoolhouse built with community labor. streets that got graded and maintained, a doctor who agreed to move to town because the mayor personally wrote him letters for 3 months straight, small victories that added up to something bigger. Winter came again, and with it a quietness that felt earned rather than imposed. They had food stored, wood stacked, money in the bank. Noah was healthy, thriving in the small school they'd helped establish. The mining claim was producing steady income. The farm was positioned for spring planting. Everything was as secure as it could be in a world that didn't promise security. On Christmas Eve, snow falling soft outside, they sat around the fire. Noah had finally crashed after hours of excitement over the wooden train set Rhett had built him over the course of 3 months, working late nights in the barn to keep it secret. The cabin was quiet except for the crackling flames and Noah's soft breathing from his cot. "This time last year I was half frozen and completely lost," Rhett said softly. "Didn't think I'd make it another week." "Glad you did." "Yeah, me too." He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small wrapped in cloth. "I made you something." He unwrapped it slowly, revealing a ring. Simple, carved from wood, smooth to silk. Not fancy or expensive, but clearly made with hours of careful work. Alara's breath caught. "It's not a proposal," Rhett said quickly. "Not yet, not until you're ready, but I wanted you to have it, as a promise that I'm here, that I'm staying, that whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I will be too." She took the ring, turned it over in her fingers, saw the hours of work carved into it, the patience, the hope. She thought about the year that had passed, about all the reasons she'd had to say no, about Jonas and fear and all the ways love had hurt her before. But she also thought about Rhett teaching Noah to read, about his hands fixing things instead of breaking them, about the way he looked at her like she was worth fighting for, every single day, even when she didn't believe it herself. "Ask me," she said. "What?" "Ask me, right now." "Alara, you said you needed time, and I've had time, almost a year. And I've learned that time doesn't make fear disappear. It just gives you more time to be scared." She met his eyes. "I'm still terrified. I probably always will be. But I'm also tired of letting fear make my decisions." Rhett set down the cloth, knelt awkwardly on the floor in front of her. His hands were shaking slightly. "Alara Vance, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you? Will you trust me enough to build something real, even though we're both disasters who'll probably mess it up 100 times? She laughed through tears. "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. It's the only one I've got." "Yes." My answer's yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like he'd measured it somehow, without her knowing. They sat there on this floor in front of the fire, holding each other while Noah slept and snow fell outside and the future stretched ahead, full of possibility and terror in equal measure. "We're really doing this," she whispered. "Yeah, we really are. I'm going to mess this up. Me too. We're going to fight and disappoint each other and probably regret it sometimes. Probably. But we're doing it anyway." "Yeah, we are." She kissed him, soft and slow, a promise without words. They were married a month later in the small church the community had built together, using lumber from Rhett's claim and labor from a dozen families who showed up because that's what communities did. Noah stood as witness, so proud he nearly burst. He'd insisted on wearing the new shirt Alara had made him, even though it was stiff and uncomfortable. Sarah from the bakery cried through the entire ceremony. Samuel Grant gave a toast about stubborn people and impossible odds that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. Half the town showed up, the half that mattered. Charlotte sent a letter from Boston, full of congratulations and news of her own. She'd met someone, a lawyer who made her laugh, who didn't try to fix her but just accepted who she was. She was happy. Actually, genuinely happy for the first time in years. Alara cried reading that letter, grateful beyond words that Charlotte had found peace. The world kept turning, problems kept coming. Being mayor was exhausting. There were disputes she couldn't solve and people she couldn't help, and nights she lay awake wondering if she was doing more harm than good. The mine had issues, a cave-in that injured one worker, equipment failures, fluctuating silver prices that made profit margins tight. The farm required constant work. Crops failed. Animals got sick. Equipment broke. Noah got sick twice more that first year, though never as bad as that first time. Each time, Alara felt the same terror, the same helplessness. But each time, he recovered. Life wasn't suddenly perfect because they'd survived the worst. It was just life, with all its complications and difficulties and unexpected disasters. But through it all, they had each other. And that turned out to be enough. More than enough. 2 years after the wedding, on a spring morning that felt like the world renewing itself, Alara stood in the field watching Rhett and Noah work side by side. The boy was 9 now, still small, but growing stronger, more confident. He'd asked Rhett about Colorado 6 months earlier. Alara had been terrified, waiting for the moment when Noah would see Rhett differently, love him less. Instead, Noah had listened to the whole story, thought about it for a long time, then hugged Rhett and said, "You saved people. That's what heroes do." Rhett had cried. Actually cried, for the first time since Alara had known him. She placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the small swell there. The baby was due in October. They hadn't told Noah yet, weren't sure how he'd react to sharing their attention. But they would, soon. Rhett looked up from the field, caught her watching, smiled. He said something to Noah, then started walking toward her. "You okay?" he asked when he reached her. "Yeah, just thinking." About? About how far we've come, how different everything is. He pulled her close, one hand settling naturally on her stomach. "You ready to tell him?" "Not yet. Soon." Noah ran up, covered in dirt, grinning. "Pa says we're going to have the best crop yet. He says if I keep helping, I'll be a real farmer by the time I'm 10. "You're already a real farmer," Alara said. "Nuh-uh. Real farmers know everything. I still got lots to learn." "That's true for all of us," Rhett said, ruffling his hair. They stood there together, Alara and Rhett and Noah, soon to be 4, looking at the field they'd planted, the home they'd built, the life they were creating one difficult, beautiful day at a time. 3 more years passed. Charlotte was born in October during an early snowstorm, screaming her displeasure at the world with impressive volume. Noah was instantly smitten, insisted on helping with everything even though he was more hindrance than help. The mining claim played out eventually, as all claims did, but by then they'd saved enough and diversified enough that it didn't destroy them. They transitioned to full-time farming and found they preferred it anyway. Alara served 2 terms as mayor before stepping down to focus on family and the school board, where she discovered she could make just as much difference without the political headaches. Rhett never stopped being surprised that he got to stay, that this life was his, permanently, irrevocably. But the surprise shifted over time from disbelief to gratitude. Noah grew into a teenager who looked more like Rhett every year, tall, broad-shouldered, with the same careful way of approaching problems. He never called Rhett anything but Pa, never questioned whether they were really family. Charlotte grew into a whirlwind of energy and opinions, stubborn and fierce, and completely unwilling to be ignored. The nightmares didn't disappear completely. Alara still woke sometimes thinking Jonas was in the room. Rhett still had dreams about Colorado, about running, about being trapped. But they learned to comfort each other through those moments. Learned that healing wasn't about erasing the past, it was about not letting it define the present. 5 years after their wedding, on an evening that felt like 1,000 other evenings, and somehow completely unique, Alara and Rhett sat on the porch they'd sat on 100 times before. Noah was inside teaching Charlotte how to play checkers, their voices drifting through the open window. The sun was setting in shades of orange and pink that made the whole world look painted. "You ever regret it?" Alara asked. "Which part?" "All of it. Staying, marrying me, building this life." He thought about it, really thought, because that's who he was. "No. There are days I'm tired or frustrated or wondering how I ended up here. But regret? Never. Even when I'm difficult? Especially then. Means you're fighting for what matters." She leaned against him, breathing in the smell of wood smoke and earth and home. "I love you," she said. Still not easy to say after all these years, but getting easier. "I love you too." Inside, Charlotte laughed at something Noah said, the sound pure and joyful and completely unselfconscious. "We did good," Alara said quietly. "Yeah, we did." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, clouds were building. Tomorrow might bring rain or trouble or any number of problems they couldn't predict. But tonight was quiet. Tonight was theirs. And when the storm came, because it always did eventually, they'd face it the way they faced everything else. Together. Not because they were perfect, not because love had fixed all their broken pieces, but because they'd learned something more valuable than perfection. They'd learned that being broken together was better than being whole alone, that staying was harder than running, but it was also where the real living happened. That courage wasn't about not being afraid, it was about being terrified and building something anyway. That families weren't just the people you were born to, they were the people you chose and who chose you back every single day. Somewhere between survival and hope, between disaster and grace, between the blizzard that brought Rhett to their door and this moment of perfect peace, they'd found something neither had thought they deserved. A home, a family, a future, built not on certainty or perfection or the absence of pain, but on the simple, stubborn decision to keep showing up for each other, to keep trying, to keep choosing love even when, especially when, it was hard. And that, imperfect, difficult, real, earned through every scar and every sacrifice, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The kind of everything that lasted not because it was easy, but because they'd fought for it together. The kind of everything worth keeping.